Today, no man is an alignment entire of itself.
Oh, come on!
What?
Ongoing role-playing groups depend on consistency, if they're gonna last. There's consistency of play. Sessions need to be held with some kind of regularity. There's consistency of the game itself, with mechanics that make sense. And then there's the topic I want to talk about today. Consistency of roles. That while a group of players can roleplay a wild variety of behaviours for their characters, they all have to coexist comfortably and fit into the game world. And unlike schedules or rulings, a GM can really only just advise on this, as each player is in control of their individual characters. Today I would like to talk about how players should consider how consistent their characters' behaviours are, and how unpredictable behaviours can upset group cohesion. To remedy this, I am pitching that you maintain an alignment for your character, and that it matches the setting being run, whatever the game, be it Shadowrun, Call of Cthulhu, Traveller, or Shadow of the Demon Lord. But wait, alignment's not from any of those games. That's from Dungeons and Dragons. Alignment is that thing where characters have a good or evil rating. So am I suggesting applying Dungeons and Dragons alignment to other games?
Yes! And no.
Then what are you saying?
I'm saying no. But I'm leaning towards yes.
Yes, I am using the term alignment, which was popularized by D&D. But no, I am not suggesting you literally apply D&D alignment systems to your character sheet.
Then it's no. Not necessarily.
You sound dubious.
No, I'm positive.
Of what?
Yes, you should understand that your character should have some sort of pattern of behavior or alignment that they stick to, and that alignment should also harmonize with the setting of your campaign. Confused yet? Good. Let's start things at the basics of what alignment is and where it came from. To explain alignment, first we need to look into the souls of man and clearly define what the very concepts of good and evil are. No, God, no. No, I am not doing that. I am not going to waste your time with that bollocks. I am not a philosopher. But I do come from a media and communications background.
So, let's discuss how Marxist theorists view morality through the lens of power dynamics and class struggle.
Just kidding. No, I'm not going to do that either, because it's equally pointless. However, I will try in ridiculously oversimplified terms to explain the what and why of alignment from the perspective of digesting information. How we tend to categorize patterns of human behavior for easier consumption. Alignment attempts to identify elements of human behavior, to assign these traits with positive and negative values based on the society we reside in, and then give them a label.
Each one of us is a brain, and an athlete,
and a basket case, a princess,
and a criminal. Does that answer your question? Sincerely yours, The Breakfast Club.
Stereotypes. Speedy ways to identify personality types. Are you with me so far? Okie doke, because this is where things get seemingly stupid. Alignment really has its roots in religion. When we as humans formed several of the first polytheistic religions, we considered the nature of the world around us, in the physical aspects of our terrain and weather, as well as the abstract aspects of our human emotions and behaviors. We then swirled both the physical and metaphysical up across these pantheons of gods, Each god represented a unique blend of physical elements and behavioral traits. Now, with monotheism, this whole process was streamlined. We bundled all the aspirational positive traits into a single figure. But even then, religions still found ways to split behavioral concepts back into smaller packages, such as saints or prophets. Now, as we move towards the modern era, political or economic ideologies developed, and we ascribed the followers of these philosophies packages of group behaviors that could be easily presented through media shorthand.
Truth, justice, and the American way.
Love, peace, and legalized pot.
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
Today, we have exploded into an even bigger mess of insane methods we use in our day-to-days to hopelessly try again to package behaviors, from psychological charts to horoscopes to online quizzes. I went down this weird rambling rabbit hole to demonstrate that while we cannot ever fathom what actually lies in a person's mind or in their soul, we are continuously trying to understand the world around us and the people in it by hammering common collections of behaviors and ideals into boxes of shorthand stereotype that can be consistently understood and interacted with. The creators of Dungeons & Dragons by TSR, Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax, did just that when they introduced the alignment system to their game in 1974. The alignment system was largely inspired by the works of two fantasy authors. There's the Elric series of books by Michael Moorcock and the novel 3 Hearts and 3 Lions by Poul Anderson. Both Moorcock and Anderson had established a dichotomy in their settings between the opposing forces of law and chaos. The first versions of D&D just took this concept and ran with it, with the behavior of any character, NPC, or creature being assigned one of 3 alignments: law, neutrality, or chaos. On the one end, lawful characters respected the accepted rules of society and upheld the order of things. On the other end, chaotic characters were uncaringly anarchic and rejected order, while neutral characters could be defined as having no strong feelings either way.
I have no strong feelings one way or the other.
Very soon, however, Gygax began to question if this system was overly simplistic. After all, a character could buck against the system, but be doing it for the betterment of society. And a character could enforce the law, but be doing it only to cause misery. So, after bouncing back and forth between a few printings, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons settled on a new, expanded version of alignment, where law and order ran on one axis and good and evil ran on another. Good and evil really in this context being shorthand for a character's selfishness, with good being extremely selfless and evil being totally selfish. This resulted in 9 alignments: lawful good, lawful neutral, lawful evil, neutral good, true neutral, neutral evil, chaotic good, chaotic neutral, and chaotic evil. When people talk about alignment, this is the chart they usually refer to: a 3x3 pantheon of broad stroke archetypes that can be applied to the majority of characters that one might play. And completing the loop I mentioned before, Gygax and Arneson would even assign the first gods in D&D's pantheon with alignments. And most characters, but especially clerics, acted in accordance with the alignment of their preferred deity. But alignment in D&D wasn't just descriptive. It was a directive, a set of guardrails that characters were expected to act within, with certain character types bound to a restricted selection of alignments. For example, paladins, who are holy warriors fighting in the name of righteousness, well, they could only act in a lawful good manner. And if a character was to repeatedly act outside their alignment guidelines, the GM was expected to declare that that character's alignment had changed. If this happened to any class tied to a specific alignment, like paladins, those characters would lose many of their special abilities. While that directive use of alignment drew a lot of player ire for being restrictive and has been largely rejected by the modern version of the D&D game, the alignment system did have utility when it was introduced, and it has since been extremely helpful in my approach to role-playing new characters. It maintains consistency in character and connects them to the game's setting. So now I'm done with the history lesson. Let's first tackle using alignment from the perspective of character. While I have and will keep using the term alignment in this video, the core of what I'm really proposing is for players, regardless of system, to have a clear understanding of just 3 mental elements of each character they play. What their strongest personal wants are, what extremes they are and are not willing to go for those wants, and how those wants intersect with the needs and expectations of both the society their game inhabits and the needs and wants of other characters in their world. In essence, a simple template to their likely behavior whenever situations are presented to them. Alignment is just a good catch-all term. Although, if you want to, I think using any of the original D&D alignments can work in any game. If you really want to inform your character's alignment, the best place to start is by looking at your sheet. Most games don't use anything like alignment, but many of them do provide players with background hooks, such as the player's profession, their outlook, their prized possessions, or people who are important to them. The problem I find is that many players fill all these entries out and then utterly ignore them or what they mean for the rest of the campaign, which is a shame, because it's not just fluff. Game designers put those background sections there to help you. These background elements are not an alignment, but they can assist you in figuring out the alignment you will use and act as the tools to express that alignment during play. For instance, let's imagine a character that has the background entry that they have strong feelings on animal welfare. Now let's imagine this same character seeing a big scary thug mistreating a pet dog in the street. If this character was what we might consider lawfully good, they might walk up and intercede, telling the thug off, following the rules of society while acting selflessly and going ahead themselves. A more neutral character might avoid personal risk by enlisting others or using trickery to subdue the thug. And a more chaotic player may just go full John Wick on their asses there and then in the middle of the street. In all 3 cases, the animal welfare hook was acted upon, but the approach was radically different and clearly expressed in broad strokes who that character was. It's not essential for players to have an alignment in mind to have their characters express themselves, but for those players who are just acquainting themselves with a new character, or who in general have trouble role-playing a person who differs from themselves in life, an alignment can give those players a consistent baseline to use when reacting to gameplay events. Expressions through action lets other players understand how this character ticks, who they are, and how they respond to things. This means your character sticks in their memory. They can more easily bounce roleplay interactions off your character and will be more inclined to do so. They'll also be more entertained by your actions as they're happening, like watching a favorite character in a show. In my dog abuser example, they'll chuckle as the goody two-shoes sighs and walks over with lecture finger readied. Or they could be gasping out in horror as the vigilante sighs and walks over with a machete readied. The reason I harp on about having consistency is that if you respond randomly all the time, other players have no expectations to engage with. And while it's a topic for another day, I do think consistency is one of the real unspoken problems with murder hobos. The kind of player characters who might be heroes coming to save the townsfolk one minute, but threatening the town shopkeeper with finger removals for better prices the next minute. It's not that these kind of player characters are simply violent sociopaths, it's that they're not being consistent. at even being violent sociopaths. More often than not, these players will just switch from acting good to acting selfish in the spur of the moment when they think it serves their benefit as a player, not as a character. It's why chaotic neutral, aka the madman's alignment, got a somewhat bad rap. Chaotic neutral is a legitimate mindset if it is actually done so in earnest, as that person who is predictably unpredictable. But in D&D, it quickly became known as the alignment players took to do whatever self-serving stuff they could, but never get called on it.
That's just my alignment.
And while that may be fun for that player or even a table of players, it can get frustrating for any players at a table who are actually trying to roleplay. And it's quite likely frustrating for most GMs when the world they built is basically of little importance to the player or players who are dicking about, especially if this lack of consistency disrupts the flow of play or story. Now, I know suggesting you approach your new characters with an alignment in mind will ruffle some feathers. Over the years, RPG players have grown to dislike alignment immensely. The main complaint being that it's a pigeonholing of behaviors, which cannot possibly describe the full complexities of real people. And you know what? I agree 100%, but I have to serve some hard truth pills here for you. Tabletop RPG characters are not complex real people. They are characters, and specifically as tabletop characters, they likely don't even have the complexity of the fully fleshed out characters in film and literature, at least at session 1. No writer has designed them to perfectly react and evolve over the series of various plot arcs they'll meet, since no one at their creation but the GM would know what plot arcs there would be. And because of the luck of the dice, even the GM doesn't know how those plot points are going to turn out. So yes, the concept of alignment may be crude, but that's fine, because tabletop characters, specifically new ones, are crude creations. Rather than comparing fresh characters to those in movies or books, players at session 1 should seek inspiration from television and how characters are presented in a show's first episode, aka the pilot episode. Specifically, the pilot for a show that has no idea if it will get renewed for a second season. Characters in those kind of pilots are usually not fleshed out at all, with some aspects of who they are being forgotten later down the line, or just flat out retconned.
Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs!
But they usually do have a recognizable set of behaviors already in place. Case in point, in Star Trek The Next Generation, we all love Captain Picard. He adores learning and strongly favors diplomacy and the rule of law, resorting to violence only as a last resort. Those were established as his alignment behaviors from the very start, running all the way to the series finale. As the episodes and seasons went on, his actor, Patrick Stewart, and the show's writing team did figure out Picard's groove a bit more, and they did fine-tune the character. They dialed down some of his early crotchetiness.
Sir, I know this may finish me as an acting ensign, but...
Shut up, Wesley!
And added on more complexities. But from day one, the show had Picard's alignment locked in. You'll notice how I mentioned that his character changed, that there were modifications down the line. That's intentional, because having an alignment in mind when you first run your character does not mean they cannot grow and cannot shift. In fact, adapting and evolving a character is a lot easier when you are building off something basic as a foundation. Don't think of alignment as the strict set of directives that it was in D&D. Think of consulting your alignment as just asking your character what they would do and go with what feels right. In fact, as an alternative, you can entirely base your alignment on someone existing from fiction if that helps. So let's say you're playing a space captain. Ask what would Captain Picard do? Or what would Captain Drummer from The Expanse do? Or what would Captain Mal from Firefly do? Do that until your character gets established enough in your brain that you don't even need to think about it. That it becomes second nature to play them. Something then you can build off. But for that first season or so, keep it simple. But can your alignment radically change or have major exceptions to its normal behavior? The answer is yes. In fact, a massive shift in behavior is all the more powerful if it happens only after a normal behavior has been firmly established. As long as it feels justified, that could be a one-off outlier action or a massive permanent personality change in response to massive events. For example, a family man loses their family and therefore loses his soul. Or a no-good thief is treated with immense kindness and then becomes a beacon of charity. Or a soft-spoken cat lady becomes a hard-whipping catwoman. No problem. Even D&D acknowledged in its 1991 Rules Cyclopedia that a player is in control of their own alignment, including its shift. DMs are told,
"You have not changed the character's alignment. The player has, by playing his character as a different alignment."
It goes on to say,
"Sometimes players will change their character's alignments for appropriate reasons, such as magical effects or just life events shifting a character's perspective."
The two useful takeaways I'll take and adapt from this are: 1. It is each player's own responsibility to play their character's alignment consistently. And 2. Characters can change alignment because they play out their stories in a living world that acts upon them. And that seems like a good a point as any to talk about why the setting your game takes place in is also itself integral to the alignments you run your characters with. While it perturbed a lot of players that alignment was so strict in older D&D, there is a very good reason why. As I mentioned, the origins of the alignment system stem from the writings of Michael Moorcock and Paul Anderson. In their texts, law and chaos are not just vague concepts. They physically exist within the world as tangible forces that can even be channeled through magic. And D&D adapted all of this wholesale. Bands of heroes leave frontier towns that are bastions of order and civilization to enter the brutal chaos of the wilds or twisting underground lairs. There they face down evil beings in combat and defeat them, bringing back gold and experience to level up into even more powerful entities to improve their chances of survival in a world besieged from all sides, ideologically and physically. The pantheon of D&D's gods battle for supremacy both in the open and clandestine, and the real world, the material plane, acts as a principal battlefield. The characters' alignments and their ensuing actions are deeply connected to the swirling cosmos and pantheon of gods around them. A change in a character's alignment is therefore no small thing. It has altered the fabric of reality, even if only slightly. Conflict is an essential part of genre fiction, or at least mostly is. Not literal conflict, but a thematic conflict between groupings of ideas, opposing alignments, if you will. In the fantastical Conan the Barbarian stories by tough rural Texan Robert E. Howard, the noble strength and honor of the wilds is pitted against the scheming machinations of so-called civilized men. In stark contrast, the works of Bag of Neuroses H.P. Lovecraft see the progress of science and learning as a noble but hopeless shining light held up against the horrors of ancient unknowns. A narrative's conflict is expressed through the actions of the story's characters, usually. That means that characters have expectations of behavior or alignment for the narrative setting to work.
Which is the source of this. Let's kill the guy and take the stones.
You can't do that. He's a good guy.
Let me provide you with a loose example of forming an alignment within a role-playing game setting's conflict. Shadowrun is designed to tell stories about Shadowrunners, networks of hackers, thieves, and various guns for hire who exist on the fringes of a dystopian, hyper-capitalist future. They earn cash by taking criminal jobs, be it kidnappings, heists, hits, usually from corporate clients who want to take a swipe at their competition. The chief conflicts of that setting are the safe and restricted system versus the free and dangerous fringe, the weight of capitalism versus compromised morality stemming from it, the scheming of the corporates versus the honor found amongst thieves. The players exist on this side of the conflict, and these elements can help build a character alignment that will be a good fit for this setting. So, your character's an outsider. How much do they embrace that? Are they hoping to one day cross back into society and see Shadowrunning as a temporary situation? Or are they resigned to it and they just want to earn? Or are they fully embracing it and live for the thrill? Next is their relationship with morality. If they are a Shadowrunner, they are compromised morally. They understand they have and will do bad things, including hurting and likely killing people, or else they won't eat. However, while you could play as someone with zero morality who will just shoot kids in the face, that's not really presenting the theme of being morally compromised either. You should think of where your character's current line in the sand is. Maybe it's leaving civilians alone from harm. Maybe you're completely fine with killing, but you're really against torture of any kind. Maybe it's something oddly specific, like not hurting anything you find defenseless. Think of something that is a limit for your character and why they have that line. And remember, it also fits the theme of compromise that when the time comes, they still might have to cross that boundary. And that will be difficult and it might change them. Lastly, honor among thieves. You're a team. You are going to be working together. You have to trust them and not screw them over. Maybe you truly believe in a code. Maybe it's just ice cold professionalism and preserving your cred and you don't really care about them as human beings. Maybe it's just the reliable paycheck of having a team when no one else would take you. Whatever the why not is for turning on them, know it. The character can prioritize themselves, and certainly many NPCs they work with might not be trustworthy, but your player character on your team does not fit this setting if they are going to casually screw over their teammates. But Shadowrun is just one example. Each RPG is completely different in its expectations for how characters should be played to fit with a setting cohesively. In another sci-fi game like the Alien RPG, it would be totally acceptable to have a character who would horribly screw over other player characters.
You know, Burke, I don't know which species is worse. You don't see them each other over for a goddamn percentage.
While you might get raised eyebrows for playing a sweet-hearted pacifist in the grimdark of Warhammer 40k, a superhero who displays no mercy in the lighthearted world of Sentinel Comics would be incredibly awkward. It's up to GMs to know where the conflict lies in the setting they're running, and to help players understand that setting's expectations, so they can build characters with an alignment that is going to suit that setting's conflict and its overall tone. Now, that doesn't mean you can't test the boundaries of a setting. You can play a kinder than normal character in a cruel world, and vice versa. But even then, you have to know when to reel in that roleplay based on what kind of story you're playing. In the original Star Wars by George Lucas, smuggler Han Solo is a total self-centered scoundrel who only looks out for himself.
Look, I ain't in this for your revolution, and I'm not in it for you, Princess. I expect to be well paid. I'm in it for the money.
Han eventually abandons Luke right before the final battle to instead go pay off a bounty that's on his head.
Take care of yourself, Han. I guess that's what you're best at, isn't it?
And that's totally in character. But at the last moment, Han comes back to help, because classic Star Wars is a heroic fantasy setting and there is a minimum expectation of how its characters should behave. That brings me to my final point, that game settings are more than the product of any designer or the ramblings of your GM. Your fellow players are also contributors to the setting. Their words and actions help modify the tone of the game. And to respect a setting means you need to try and read your fellow players' contributions to the tone and modify your own character's behavior accordingly. If there's an extreme action, you might take that undermines the alignment of others, even if it is what your alignment might do, be it stabbing the helpless prisoners in front of the paladin, or taking all the gold your thief companion took and donating it to the orphanage. Stop and ask yourself if it's really worth taking that action at the expense of the setting. If that feels too restrictive, maybe that campaign's simply not a good fit for you or the kind of character alignments you want to play. But if you are able to, try and understand the alignments of the characters your fellow players are running. And in that moment that you want to take an extreme action, find a more neutral path. Thank you so much for watching. I was nervous to approach this subject. GMs should try and run campaigns with settings that are in line with the kinds of characters that their players want to play, and should be talking to them to find out what those settings are. But I did want to address how players have a responsibility to engage with games consistently. Otherwise, in channel news, we hit 400 subs, which is crazy. Thank you. And the next big vid will be hitting a module in the darkest regions of space. But until then, happy gaming, and to thine own selves, be true.